Hey guys, here I am again. Today's lecture is on skills and abilities. So I'm going to talk a lot about how men and women are different with respect to skills and abilities, and also how they're kind of the same in some respects. So the first thing I wanted to kind of get into, we've been real nature heavy at the first part of the course, and some of this does have a bearing on skills and abilities like testosterone versus estrogen, XXXY, all that stuff we've already been talking about. But what I really want to focus on is how men and women are trained to be different, and a lot of it has to do with cultural expectations, which we've also talked about, and it doesn't have so much to do with nature up here. So the very next video I'm fixing to show, I think it's a Dove video, but it could be some other company. But anyway, it's called Like a Girl. And if I was in class, I'd be crying like a girl. And that's also offensive, right? Like a girl. And so I wanted to show this video before we get started, and then I'll come back and we'll officially begin.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm going to just give you some actions to do. And just do the first thing that comes to mind. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
My hair. Oh, God.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aw. My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
Is like a girl a good thing?
Actually, don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. It sounds like you're trying to humiliate someone.
So when they're in that vulnerable time between 10 and 12, how do you think it affects them when somebody uses like a girl as an insult?
I think it definitely drops their self-confidence and really puts them down because during that time, they're already trying to figure themselves out. And when somebody says you hit like a girl, it's like, well, what does that mean? Because they think they're a strong person. It's kind of like telling them that they're weak and they're not as good as them.
And what advice do you have to young girls who are told they run like a girl, kick like a girl, hit like a girl, swing like a girl?
Keep doing it because it's working. If somebody else says that running like a girl or kicking like a girl or shooting like a girl is something that you shouldn't be doing, that's their problem. Because if you're still scoring and you're still getting to the ball on time and you're still being first, you're doing it right. Doesn't matter what they say. I mean, yes, I kick like a girl and I swim like a girl and I walk like a girl and I wake up in the morning like a girl because I am a girl. And that is not something that I should be ashamed of. So I'm gonna do it anyway. That's what they should do.
If I asked you to run like a girl now, would you do it differently?
I would run like myself.
Would you like a chance to redo it?
Yeah.
Why can't run like a girl also mean win the race?
Every time I tell myself I'm not going to cry and I start bawling my head off at that video. But anyway, let me come back to what we're starting talking about. We're going to do these two today. I broke it into two sections. So there's skills and abilities part 1 and skills and abilities part 2. And part 2 will be the next lecture. So today I'll talk about personality traits and attribution. Now, when I talk about personality traits, I think I have 2 of them, if you can see my fingers here, but I could have more, but I think I'm only going to focus on 2. And the first one is called achievement motivation. Now, I'm the wrong person to ask about this. David McClelland, I think that's his first name, back in the 50s started studying this. I think it was more focused on males than females, so that's a gender thing. But basically, it's like, how much do you push yourself? I mean, are you a personal best kind of a person? That's why I'm the wrong person to ask. I mean, I'll be on the trail every day pushing myself up to the top of a mountain. Nobody has to tell me to do that. So some people are real high in need for achievement, like me. I want to win. I got to be the best. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, I want to try to figure it out. And other people are like, well, whatever. I just don't do that. And so he started to notice these two camps of people, people that are high in need for achievement and low in need for achievement. I'm not saying that females are low in need for achievement, but I just think a part of that big wheel, if you're not first, you're last, is need for achievement, and that's a dude thing. And so I'm not saying it's only a dude thing, but dudes are kind of pushed towards that because it's one of the four stereotypes of a male. Now, what they would do sometimes is these silly ring toss experiments, and what they would say to people is that you can choose how far you get right here. You can choose how far apart you want to get to try to throw the ring on there. Well, people high in need for achievement would be like, go back and forth and trying to find that right spot where it's like just hard enough, where it's challenging, but not too challenging where there's no chance. People low in need for achievement goes, you mean I can just walk right up here and just put it on there with my hand? Okay, I'll just do that. And so it's this difference. Like, I don't know. If I was like a student in Eric Haas's class, I might do something like this for, one of his experiments or, methods class. And so think about video games. When you start a video game, if I want to go through campaign mode, of course I can put it on very easy, but then when I finish, it's like, yeah, but that wasn't an accomplishment. If I put it on impossible, it's like, well, something like Dark Souls and shit like that, that shit gets hard. You know what I mean? So I tend to just put it on default in the middle, because if I feel like I went through campaign mode, I have the PS4 on here, not the PS5, but if I went through on campaign mode, I feel like I appropriately challenged myself, kind of like the people in the ring toss experiment. Okay, the second personality trait, sorry I don't have a number on here, but this is number 2, is called fear of success, which is kind of a weird thing. You would think people would want to be successful, but Martina Horner started studying it in the 1960s and looked at this difference between women and men. And what she did in this one study is show a description of a successful medical school student to both men and women, and they reacted differently. Men said, oh, this would be great. I'm in medical school and I'm doing great. I'm going to be a doctor. And women were like, it is good that I'm going to be a doctor, but think about the 1960s, the flack that you're going to get. I don't want to go all Ruth Bader Ginsburg right now, but you know what I'm talking about. Women were, held to different standards, and there were societal norms and all kinds of stuff that they could think about. So it got to me to thinking about fear of success, because a lot of people in my family kind of have that too, where they almost, handicap themselves. I talk about self-handicapping in my other class, instead of go ahead and be successful. Okay, so if any of this makes sense, other researchers have found that if you show a man a description of a successful man in nursing school versus medical school, then maybe he has a fear of success in arenas where he's not, normally in. Now, this is the 1970s still, so it's still kind of old, but then I argue, Meet the Parents, they make fun of him because he's a male nurse and not a male doctor. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, that's been a while too, but things are changing in certain fields. But when we get to careers and work, I'm going to come back to this and show how a lot of careers are still sex typed. Now, come back to fear of success. Usually when I'm in my intro class, I think I go off on this, but especially in my religion class, because I don't know if you like Lord of the Rings, but one of my favorite characters is Strider. And Strider's kind of in the shadows because he's not living up to his expectations, what is expected of him. And when he comes in contact with the Elf King, I can't remember Hugo Weaving's name right now, but anyway, he says, put aside the ranger. You are meant to become the king of Gondor. Step into your kingdom. Stop skulking around in the shadows. And I'm saying that to you and to me, Timothy. Stop acting small. Start being the king of Gondor, because this warrior is who is within all of us. And so I think I have this on here. The reason I'm a teacher is called Stand and Deliver. One of the big reasons is this movie based on Jaime Escalante, a real teacher in the high school system, especially a teacher of Latino students. And this is my favorite quote from him. If we expect kids to be losers, they will be losers. If we expect them to be winners, they will be winners. They rise or fall to the level of expectations of those around them, especially their parents and teachers. Don't get me started. Parents and teachers set the expectations. You can do anything. So, are you afraid to succeed? One of my favorite books is called Illusions. And in Illusions, he says this, Richard Bach, argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. Everybody's going to tell you to fucking play it safe in life. And playing it safe gets you nothing but fucking misery. So fuck that shit. Hopefully that YouTube doesn't take down this next video, but it's about 10 minutes. But it's a video, it's a motivational video about taking risks and not being afraid to succeed.
I found that nothing in life is worthwhile unless you take risks. Nothing. Nelson Mandela said, "There is no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life that's less than the one you're capable of living." Now, I'm sure in your experiences in school and applying to college and picking your major and deciding what you want to do with life, I'm sure people have told you to make sure you have something to fall back on. Make sure you got something to fall back on, honey. But I never understood that concept, having something to fall back on. If I'm going to fall, I don't want to fall back on anything. I want to fall forward. I figure at least this way I'll see what I'm going to hit. Without consistency, you'll never finish. So do what you feel passionate about. Take chances. Don't be afraid to fail. There's an old IQ test was 9 dots, and you had to draw 5 lines with a pencil within these 9 dots without lifting the pencil. The only way to do it was to go outside the box. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. Don't be afraid to fail big, to dream big. But remember, dreams without goals are just dreams. Reggie Jackson struck out 2,600 times in his career, the most in the history of baseball. But you don't hear about the strikeouts. People remember the home runs. Fall forward. Thomas Edison conducted 1,000 failed experiments. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Because the 1,001st was the light bulb. Fall forward. Every failed experiment is one step closer to success. You've got to take risks, and I'm sure you've probably heard that before, but I want to talk to you about why that's so important. You will fail at some point in your life. Accept it. You will lose. You will embarrass yourself. You will suck at something. There's no doubt about it. And I know that's probably not a traditional message for a graduation ceremony, but hey, I'm telling you, embrace it, because it's inevitable. In the acting business, you fail all the time. Early on in my career, I auditioned for a part in a Broadway musical. Perfect role for me, I thought, except for the fact that I can't sing. I didn't get the job. But here's the thing. I didn't quit. I didn't fall back. I walked out of there to prepare for the next audition, and the next audition, and the next audition. I prayed. I prayed, and I prayed. But I continued to fail, and fail, and fail. But it didn't matter, because you know what? There's an old saying, you hang around the barbershop long enough, sooner or later you're going to get a haircut. So you will catch a break, and I did catch a break. Last year, I did a play called Fences on Broadway. But here's the kicker. It was at the Court Theater. It was at the same theater that I failed that first audition 30 years prior. The point is, every graduate here today has the training and the talent to succeed. But do you have the guts to fail? If you don't fail, you're not even trying. I'll say it again. If you don't fail, you're not even trying. To get something you never had, you have to do something you never did. Just imagine you're on your deathbed, and standing around your deathbed are the ghosts representing your unfulfilled potential. The ghost of the ideas you never acted on. The ghost of the talents you didn't use. And they're standing around your bed, angry, disappointed, and upset. They say, we came to you because you could have brought us to life, they say. And now we have to go to the grave together. So I ask you today, how many ghosts are going to be around your bed when your time comes?
Okay, the third personality trait is really easy. I hope you enjoyed that video. It really gets me going, but excuse me. Anyway, it's called self-efficacy. And efficacy to me right here, if I can get my red pen on here, kind of to me sounds like efficiency in a way. And that's what they call efficacy of a drug. How efficient or how good does it work? So how good do you work? And so this is your feelings about your competence and effectiveness at a given task. It could be about all tasks, but specifically, like if you ask me about, I don't know, art, I feel like I have efficacy with art. But if you ask me about something else, like playing football, I don't have a lot of efficacy for that. So when I think about self-efficacy, it could be like, oh yeah, I'm good at basketball, but not at math, or I'm good at math, but not at art. You know, there could be all these different areas of efficacy where you have feelings of confidence. Now, one of the reasons I think this might be more of a male trait than a female trait, but I don't know, I mean, we'll get into this later, is that we have this saying in our culture, jack of all trades. Jack, it doesn't say Jill of all trades, that men are supposed to figure everything out. You know, that's a problem, kind of a problem with men. It's like, can't you ask for help, like directions and things like this? You know what I mean? No, I've got to be able to be good at everything. And it kind of goes back into that big wheel stereotype that we talked about before. I wish we were in class and we could go into this one in a little bit more detail. Okay, the fourth one is locus of control. And you might be wondering, why am I whipping through these 4 personality traits? Well, later on, I'm going to bring them back in and say, see how it affects your efficacy or your locus of control or your achievement motivation. Maybe not so much with fear of success. But Rodgers, one of my favorite people to talk about, in 1966, he started noticing that his patients fell into 2 groups of people. One group of people blame themselves or think they can get themselves out of their own jam. They're like internally focused. Like, I am responsible for my own life. Even if it came out bad, it's my fault. I'll take culpability. And so these kinds of people we tend to, from a Western perspective, see as healthier, that have this internal locus. They're in control of their life. Now, if you were in my religion class, I would argue the opposite. Like, from this other perspective, some of his patients he found were external locuses. Like, I don't know why bad shit happens to me all the time. It just seems to always happen to me. I'm like a feather in the wind, and the wind's just blowing me all over the place, and I can't get in control of my life because I step out the door and a bunch of bad shit happens to me. And you can see this duality and how this has a lot to do with how you greet the world. You know, I tend to be a little external locus. You know, I want to be internal locus, but a lot of times I feel like that feather in the wind. Now, when I talk about this, I usually talk about Forrest Gump, and if we were in class, I would show a movie clip. But at the very first of the movie, a feather comes and falls down on his foot right here. He is the feather in the wind. Forrest Gump, you might as well call locus of control, external locus of control. Because he just, wherever the wind blows him, okay, over here I'll play football. Over here, you know, it's like I'll catch shrimp. Over here, you know what I mean, I'll run marathons. And so he just goes with the flow. This is where external locus is much healthier for Forrest than it is for another character in the movie that has an internal locus. This guy right here, Lieutenant Dan, he has to make shit happen. And that's why I'm arguing that sometimes an internal locus is not always the healthiest approach. So now what I'm going to do, I think, is try to bring these four together, these four personality traits, as we move on into the next section, which is called attribution. Okay, so here we go, attribution. If you were in my social psychology class, I might spend 2 days on this because it has so much involved, but it is a big fancy word for a simple idea, explaining the behavior of people. You don't have to have a PhD to do this. You just go, oh, it was her fault. Why was it her fault? That's the most important thing to me is the causes. Not only do you blame the person or yourself, it could be about yourself too, but why did I do it? Why did he do it? And so I always say, just turn on the news tonight and you're going to start making attributions. Why'd they do it? Why'd they go so buck wild crazy? Okay, enough about that. When I talk about attributions, they go one of two ways. Either you blame the person or you blame the world. This should sound familiar. Rotter, 1966, right? He divided patients into one of two categories, that an internal and external locus. It's kind of the same idea. So if I see this girl right here doing something, then I can say it's her fault, or she's a victim of circumstances, or maybe a little bit of both. And that's kind of like nature and nurture. Now, one of the areas they've done a lot of research in is how we make attributions for successes and failures, not only for other people, but also for ourselves. So internal or external are right here. Do I blame myself or blame the world? Let me get this off of here. Now, what does stable and unstable mean? Well, stable means it doesn't change, it's set. That thing does not change. Unstable means it changes. I'm glad I wrote this on here, but I'm not doing a good job. That says changes. Okay, set or changes. Okay, what is set that's internal? Let me erase all that crap off of here. Your ability. Like, I wish I was as good as my friend Doug at math, and I would study, but his mind is just like God-given like that. Same thing, I wish I could slam dunk the basketball, but I could like practice a lot every day, but I don't think I have that God-given ability. That's set. What can I change about myself? How hard I try. I don't want to go off on this, but this is it. This is the only thing you can change in the world, is how hard you fucking try. That's like one of the 4 agreements from Don Miguel Ruiz. Always do your best. Okay, if you're an athlete, you should be paying attention. Okay, external and stable. Speaking of athletes, some things are set. Like if you go play basketball, it's 10 feet high. They don't change the hoop down a little bit lower because you're shorter, Tim. No, it's 10 feet high. Deal with it, buddy. That's set, this thing down here. What changes over here in the world? Sometimes you get a break, get lucky, make a lucky shot, right? Sometimes you get a bad break, get a bad call in a game. Okay, sorry to go sports on this. Let's relate it to another example. Let's say you get your test back, you make an A+, you go, that's because I'm the shit, or I studied hard. What if you get your test back and it's an F? You go, that test was fucked up, it was bogus. But I don't make the test, I had to take it, like the GRE, the SAT, whatever, LSAT, all these different ones you could get into. Like, oh yeah, if you make an F on the test, you go, oh yeah, I showed up on a day and I thought the test was next week. Okay, I hope I made sense with those 4 categories right there. Okay, so on this slide, we're still talking about successes and failures, as you can see. Now, this first bias I wanted to mention before we move on is called the self-serving bias, and there'll be a second one as well. But in this bias, this is what people with high self-esteem tend to do. When they succeed, they take credit. It was me, or I studied really hard. I made an A on the test. Why? Because I studied really hard, or I'm smart. And when they fail, they go, I made a bad grade on the test, but that was because I misjudged, something, or it was on the wrong day, or the test was really, really hard and the teacher should change that test. It's something wrong with the test, not me. Now, it's bias, right? Because sometimes when you fail, it is your fault. And sometimes when you succeed, you got lucky. But if you do this all the time, you're biased in this way, you'll feel pretty good about yourself. Your efficacy, your self-esteem, your achievement motivation, all these things I talked about before. Now, self-defeating bias is what Tim tends to do. It sucks. When I succeed, I go, oh, well, anybody could have done that. I got lucky. It was so easy of a task, whatever. I don't focus on this in life. People go, look at all these things you've done. Who cares? Look at all my failures. When I fail, I bring out the fucking hammer and start hammering myself. And this is how I got my PhD. It's like, I didn't really say I don't have the talent. Maybe I didn't have as much talent as the other dudes. But I know one thing I have is ability. And fuck you, I'm going to take it away from you. You know what I mean? And so that's where, even though I had a low self-esteem, I used a self-defeating bias. I'm not the only person that's ever done this. I remember Jerry Rice had his acceptance speech, and he's one of the greatest receivers of all time. He says, every time I stepped a foot on the field, I was afraid of failing, and this is what drove me. And so it drove me too. And so, but the only thing is, a byproduct could be low self-esteem, because you're always like, good things are not me and bad things are me. Just take it from me, I'm the poster child for this. Okay, so one of the sentiments that people like me struggle with, today I was struggling with it, nothing I do matters. Like, I have depression and anxiety real bad. And it's like, I don't necessarily always identify with the feather in the wind, but I understand that idea. It's like, oh, all this bad shit is happening, I can't control it. And so the last thing I wanted to mention is this, because attributions do have a lot to do with how you see yourself. We'll talk later about how we see girls and boys, and this is why I'm bringing it up, because how do we attribute the successes of girls and the successes of boys? We're going to do that here in a second. But right now, what I really want to focus on is, like, how do you feel about yourself? And so that's your self-esteem. I don't want to go, what I do usually go in my attraction lectures, but I'm going to go into this idea just with one quote. It comes from Gandhi, and here it is. Man often becomes what he believes himself to be. I'm going to say he always becomes that woman too. If I keep on saying to myself I cannot do a certain thing, it's possible that at the end I might not be able to do it. On the contrary, if I keep saying I can do it, even if I don't have the capability, slam dunk the basketball, maybe if I try hard enough, I will overcome that incapability. You get me? And that's you. It's your beliefs about yourself, Timothy, this guy right here. And that's what really guides your self-esteem, is your self-talk, and self-talk is a reflection of attribution. Okay, up to this point, you might be wondering, what the F does this have to do with gender? I really haven't related it to gender, and so now that's what I'm fixing to do, is to relate all this stuff back to gender. This is called the ultimate attribution error, and I usually use it in the context of racism within my social psychology class, but we can apply it to sexism as well, and it relates to the self-serving versus the self-defeating bias. Now, what is it? Basically, remember the in group versus the out group. My group, if I'm looking at other men, then I would go, okay, when they succeed, that's because they tried hard or they're smart. And when other men fail, not Tim, but other men in my own group, then I go, well, that's because they got unlucky or the task was too hard. And that preserves kind of my self-esteem about men in general as a group, because it's my group, my team. Okay, so I'm not saying it's right, but we kind of do this. I could go even further and say white men, because I usually do that within the context of racism. Now, what do we do for people in the out group? The self-defeating bias. You notice that first one was the self-serving bias. We do the self-defeating bias. When a woman does good, you go, oh, okay, I'll do the self-defeating bias for you. The reason you did good, girl, is because you got lucky. And when you do bad, oh, I told you girls can't do it. And so this is a way, I'm not saying it's right, I'm saying it's wrong, but it's a way to perpetuate racism and sexism through the way we make attributions for people of color or for women. And I'm going to come back to this again and again and again, this ultimate attribution error. Now, I hope that made sense, but Doe and Emsweiler, actually in 1974, that's kind of hard to say, published a paper that says, what is skill for the male is luck for the female. They said on a male task, well, what does that mean? Okay, like shooting a gun. If a girl does good, it's like, oh yeah, right here, she got lucky. And if a guy does good, that's because he's good at shooting guns. What's a female task? Well, maybe like sewing. If a guy does good, it's like because he's good, and a girl does good because she's good. Okay, so what gives right here? This reminds me one time my family was all together and they liked shooting guns, and my little niece Allison at the time was out in the backyard and she was killing it, and everybody's like, oh, she's just getting lucky. It's like, no, she's whipping y'all's fucking ass is what she's doing. It's like, so sometimes people from the out group will do good and we say she did good because she did it, effort or ability, but then I can still maintain my sexism. Well, she's not really like a girl. I know she could like kick anybody's ass on the tennis court, but she's different, right? And so she tries really hard, or she doesn't really fit in the category, so I can still have a low opinion of people of color or women because she's atypical. Hopefully that doesn't make sense, but it makes a lot of sense where I grew up because I grew up with a lot of racism. Okay, so I have one more section to go and then we'll be done. Okay, so this is the last section, as I promised. It's called Self-Fulfilling Prophecies, and it kind of relates a little bit to the ultimate attribution error. Both of these things we can use in tandem to kind of keep minorities, including women, down. And so self-fulfilling prophecy, I think I mentioned it before, but here it goes. It's like this. I have a belief about a person. In this case, it's a woman. And then I treat them in certain ways at school, for instance, and then all of a sudden they don't do so good in those classes. See, this is how we make attributions for women specifically and how they're doing things like a girl. I'm going to like wrap it all the way full circle right here. And specifically, what areas are we talking about? Well, that's why there's such a big emphasis on STEM. Because there's such a disparity if you look at it, and I'll get into this on the next lecture, of male versus female engineers, physicists, computer scientists, all kinds of things. It's becoming more even, but the idea is that used to that women can't do that. And so we treated them in a certain way at school. It's like we don't push them into those areas. Now we're pushing them into STEM. And they react to our treatment that comes back up here. I mean, I was just seeing an Amazon commercial about, it was an African-American woman that was like, I'm going to teach physics, you know what I mean? And because people who are minorities have been disadvantaged in this STEM area. It's not that they have less ability, they just haven't had the right nurture to bring out these talents within them. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed my lecture today. I'll have part 2 next time.